Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really trying to cut through some of the fog around modern digital governance. We're heading straight into the executive offices.
That's right. We're talking CIO, CISO, and the privacy leads the CPO or DPO, a critical group.
Exactly. And specifically how these roles interact, sometimes clash, and why getting that balance right is so vital for any business today.
And it's fascinating because the landscape has shifted so dramatically, hasn't it? You've got these huge cyber attacks, consumers genuinely worried about their data, and then this wave of regulations like GDPR, CCPA. It's really forced these roles together.
Yeah, blurred the lines, maybe. Created some confusion.
Definitely blurred the lines. And that blurring, well, that's where the risk often creeps in.
Right. So our goal today for you listening is to get really clear on what each role actually does, their distinct responsibilities, and crucially, why their collaboration is absolutely fundamental for resilience and, for growth too.
Couldn't agree more. It's not just about avoiding disaster. It's about enabling the business securely and ethically.
Absolutely. And we want to give a quick shout out and thank you to our sponsor, www.citomarketplace.com, for supporting this deep dive. We appreciate them helping us tackle these complex topics.
Indeed. Thanks to them.
Okay, so let's kick off with a quick overview. The three main roles we're unpacking today: CIO, CISO, CPO, DPO. Can you give us the elevator pitch distinction?
Sure.
Yeah.
So the CIO, Chief Information Officer, think of them as the IT strategist, the big picture person.
Focus on the tech infrastructure.
Right. Making sure IT supports the business goals. They're driving things like IT modernization, making sure services are up and running, cloud strategy. They're enabling the business through technology.
Okay. The enabler. Then the CISO, Chief Information Security Officer.
The CISO is the specialist protector. Their world is cybersecurity, protecting the company's information, its systems, its secrets,
Well,
from threats.
so defense is the key word there.
Defense, absolutely.
Yeah.
Building the security strategy, managing frameworks, responding to incidents when they happen, crisis management. That's the CISO's domain.
Got it. And the third leg of the stool, the CPO or DPO, Chief Privacy Officer or Data Protection Officer.
Right, these are the compliance commanders, maybe. Their focus is ensuring the organization follows the rules about data, specifically privacy laws and regulations.
So like GDPR, CCPA, those big ones.
Exactly. Making sure personal data is handled lawfully, transparently, ethically. It's about respecting individual rights concerning their data.
Okay, that's a helpful starting point. CIO enables, CISO protects, CPO, DPO ensures compliance. Let's dig into the CISO role a bit more. You mentioned it's become incredibly important. Why the big shift?
Oh, it's been a massive shift. It really comes down to two things. The sheer volume and sophistication of cyber attacks just reaching unprecedented levels. And maybe more importantly,
Accountability.
accountability. Exactly. Governments, regulators, they started really holding companies responsible, financially, legally. Suddenly, a security lapse wasn't just an IT problem. It was a major business crisis, potentially hitting the share price, attracting huge fines.
So the CISO had to step up, move beyond just the tech.
Absolutely. Their scope just exploded. It became about enterprise risk, not just IT risk, thinking about business processes, supply chain vulnerabilities, vendor security, the whole ecosystem.
And that strategic importance, we see it reflected in where they sit in the org chart now, right? The old model of the CISO reporting to the CIO, that seems to be fading.
It is, and for good reason. Data from around 2019 showed a big change. Only about, 24% of CISOs reported to the CIO then?
Wow, only a quarter. Where did the others report?
Well, about 40% went straight to the CEO, and 27% reported directly to the board of directors.
That's a huge statement about independence.
It is, and it's necessary. Think about it. The CIO is often incentivized for speed, efficiency, cost savings, sometimes security measures. Well, they cost money and can slow things down.
Creates a natural conflict of interest.
A potential one, definitely. If your boss, the CIO, is pushing for a fast, cheap rollout, it's harder for the CISO to say, hang on, we need these extra controls, this extra testing. Reporting higher up gives the CISO the independence to make those tough calls without that direct pressure.
That makes sense. But doesn't reporting directly to the board, say, risk creating a different kind of tension, maybe with the CEO if the CISO seems to be constantly hitting the brakes?
Oh, absolutely. It's a constant balancing act. The CISO's role inherently involves restriction, managing risk by sometimes saying no or not yet. The board needs that unfiltered risk perspective.
Even if it slows down innovation sometimes.
Even then, it's
Yeah.
a trade-off between agility and security or integrity. And this is super critical when you look at, say, third-party risk management, vetting vendors, checking their security. It's complex.
And that complexity in managing vendor risk really underscores why CISOs need the right tools and resources. Which actually is a good moment to thank our sponsor again, www.cisomarketplace.com, because navigating that whole third-party security landscape is exactly the kind of challenge they help organizations tackle.
It's a huge piece of the puzzle today, no doubt.
Okay, let's shift gears now to the privacy officer, the CPO or DPO. This role seems to have emerged more from the legal and consumer side than pure tech risk.
That's a good way to put it. While the CISO is fighting off, external attackers or internal mistakes leading to breaches, the CPO/DPO is focused on ensuring the way data is collected, used, and stored is lawful and ethical.
So it was really regulations like GDPR that gave this role its teeth.
Absolutely. GDPR was the watershed moment. It, and laws like CCPA that followed, put data privacy rights firmly on the map. Suddenly, organizations needed someone specifically focused on navigating these complex rules, working with legal teams, ensuring transparency, managing consent.
And under GDPR, the DPO role isn't always optional, is it? Sometimes it's legally required.
That's right. It's mandatory under GDPR if your core business involves large-scale, regular monitoring of individuals, think tracking online behavior, or processing large amounts of sensitive data.
Sensitive data like health records, biometrics.
Exactly. Health data, genetic data, biometric data, information about race, religion, political opinions. If you process that on a large scale, you likely need a DPO by law.
And you mentioned independence being key for the CISO. Is it the same for the DPO?
Even more so, perhaps. The requirement for DPO independence is really strong in the regulations. They must report to the highest level of management, CEO, board level,
Why so strict?
to avoid conflicts of interest. The DPO's advice needs to be impartial, focused purely on compliance and data subject rights, not swayed by, say, business targets or operational pressures.
Can you give an example of a conflict?
Sure. There's a well-known case where the Belgian Data Protection Authority actually fined a company because they appointed their director of audit, risk, and compliance as their DPO.
Ah, so the person responsible for checking compliance couldn't also be the person in charge of compliance.
Precisely. The regulator said that created an inherent conflict. You can't effectively oversee your own work. The DPO needs freedom from internal influence.
That makes the CPO/DPO a really high-stakes role. They're often dealing directly with regulators, maybe even the public, during a breach. That sounds like it requires a unique skill set.
It does. You need legal understanding, technical awareness, strong communication skills. They often become the face of the company on privacy matters. And that expertise, well, it commands a significant salary.
I saw a figure mentioned, something like $200,000 median globally back in 2021.
That sounds about right, and honestly, given the increasing complexity, I'd only expect that to have gone up. It's a critical role.
Okay, so we have these three key players. The CIO driving forward, the CIO putting up guardrails, the CPO/DPO checking the map in the rulebook, it sounds like. Well, like potential for friction is built in.
Oh, it's definitely built in.
Yeah.
You've got fundamentally different, sometimes competing priorities in that triangle. The CIO or CTO is pushing for innovation, efficiency, growth speed.
Go faster.
Right. The CISO is focused on protection, which often means slowing down, adding checks, restricting access, caution.
Hold on.
And the DPO is focused on compliance, lawfulness, rights, which means ensuring every step is documented, justified, and meets regulatory standards. Procedure.
So speed versus caution versus procedure. What happens when those priorities clash? It's more than just heated meetings, I imagine.
Much more. The real cost is operational. Think about project delays. A new data analytics platform promises huge business value, right? But the CISO might flag risk about how data is aggregated.
Okay, security concern.
Then the DPO steps in and says, wait, do we have the right consent to use this customer data in this new way?
Compliance concern?
Exactly. And suddenly that project is stuck. Functional testing gets held up, the value realization is delayed, costs mount. Misalignment directly impacts the business, potentially leading to regulatory fines or brand damage if they push ahead recklessly.
So getting them to collaborate effectively isn't just nice, it's essential. Especially, I guess, when you bring in third parties, that adds another layer of complexity.
Huge layer. Most organizations rely heavily on third parties for critical functions: payroll, cloud hosting, marketing, analytics, you name it. And statistically, a large chunk of data breaches and compliance failures involve these third parties.
So you can't just sign a contract and hope for the best.
Absolutely not. Effective third-party risk management, or TPRM, is crucial. It means doing proper due diligence before signing, making sure contracts have the right security and privacy clauses, risk ranking your vendors.
And it doesn't stop there.
No, it's ongoing.
Yep.
You need to continuously monitor their performance, their security posture, not just rely on a point-in-time check when the contract was signed. The risk landscape changes constantly.
Okay, and managing that third-party relationship often brings up this legal distinction that can be confusing. Controller versus processor. Can we clarify that?
Yes, definitely. This is fundamental under laws like GDPR, and it dictates responsibility and liability. So the controller is the organization that decides why and how personal data is processed. They're the decision maker.
They're in charge of the purpose.
Exactly. They determine the purpose and the essential means of the processing. The processor, on the other hand, is an organization that processes the data on behalf of the controller. They act on the controller's instructions.
Can you give a quick example?
Sure. Let's say Company A, a retailer, collects customer data. They decide they want to run a targeted email campaign. They hire Company B, a marketing agency, to send the emails using Company A's customer list.
Right.
In this case, Company A is the controller. They decided why the data was being used, marketing, and essentially how, email campaign targeting specific customers. Company B is the processor. They're just executing the task based on Company A's instructions.
So if Company B messes up and causes a data breach with that list,
Company A, the controller, is ultimately responsible to the customers and regulators, although Company B also has direct obligations under GDPR. The contract between them should clearly outline responsibilities, but the controller holds the primary relationship with the data subject.
got it. That clarity is vital for managing risk. So how do this CISO and DPO actually work together on the ground to manage all this risk? It sounds like risk assessments are key.
They absolutely are. It's the common ground. And data privacy risk isn't just a siloed issue anymore. It's increasingly seen as part of the broader enterprise risk management, or ERM, framework.
You even hear it mentioned in ESG discussions now.
Yes, particularly under the social pillar of ESG reporting. Respecting data privacy is increasingly viewed as a fundamental social responsibility, almost a human rights issue in some contexts.
Okay, so practically speaking, when a new project or system involving personal data comes up, how does the risk assessment process work ideally?
Well, the standard approach is risk-based. You start by figuring out the inherent risk. That's the level of risk before you apply any controls or safeguards. What's the worst that could happen if we did nothing?
Okay, the baseline risk.
Right. Then, based on that inherent risk level
Mm-hmm.
and the organization's predefined risk tolerance, how much risk they're willing to accept you determine the necessary controls. Security measures, privacy policies, training, technical safeguards,
And the goal is to reduce the risk down to
an acceptable residual risk level, the risk that remains after controls are implemented.
Now, doing a full deep dive risk assessment for every single change or new feature sounds like it could grind everything to a halt. Is there a way to streamline that?
Yes, and that's where the tiered privacy impact assessment, or PIA, process comes in. It's designed to focus effort where it's needed most.
So like a filter.
Exactly. It often starts with a screening PIA, sometimes called a Part A. It's a short set of initial questions to quickly identify if a project or process involves personal data and if it's likely to be low risk.
So many things might get screened out quickly.
Hopefully, yes. If it's clearly low risk, you document that and you're done. But if the screening flags potential high risks, maybe it involves sensitive data like health info or large-scale monitoring or new technology like AI, then you proceed to the next level.
Which is the deeper dive.
Right. That's the extended PIA, or Part B. This is a much more detailed assessment. And if the processing involves high risk, especially concerning data subjects in the EU, this extended PIA essentially becomes the mandatory Data Protection Impact Assessment, or DPIA, required under GDPR.
So it ensures the heavy lifting is reserved for the high-risk stuff.
Precisely. It makes the process manageable while still ensuring significant risks are properly analyzed and mitigated before launch.
This really shifts the perspective, doesn't it? Instead of privacy being just a compliance hurdle, this approach frames it more strategically.
That's the goal. To move beyond seeing privacy as just a cost center or a legal obligation, when you handle data responsibly, transparently, ethically, you build trust.
And trust becomes a competitive advantage.
Absolutely. In today's world, customers, employees, partners, they care about how their data is treated. Demonstrating strong privacy practices can enhance your brand reputation, build loyalty, and ultimately drive value. It's not just about avoiding fines, it's about being a trustworthy organization.
Okay, let's try and wrap this up. We've covered a lot of ground. The key takeaway seems to be CIO drives the IT engine, CSO builds the security defenses, CPO, DPO navigates the legal and ethical map. Is that a fair summary?
I think that captures the core functions well, yes.
Mhm.
Enablement, protection, compliance, and crucially, understanding that they need to work in concert, not in opposition,
Especially with third parties involved.
especially then. And underpinning all of this is the need for the organization, led by its executives, to consciously decide on its risk tolerance. How much risk are we willing to live with?
Which often comes down to tough negotiations, I guess.
It does. You see legal teams heavily involved, negotiating indemnity clauses with vendors, trying to transfer risk contractually where possible, but also advising leadership on where residual risk simply has to be accepted to move forward. It's a constant balancing act.
It really highlights the growing value of these roles. We mentioned the CPO median salary hitting $200 back in 2021. That leads to a fascinating final thought for our listeners.
Go on.
Well, think about the future. We've got even more complex regulations coming down the pike, things like the EU AI Act, the NIS2 directive, focusing on critical infrastructure cybersecurity. The demands on these roles are only increasing. So the question is, how much higher will the value and maybe the compensation for these critical risk mitigating executives climb by, say, the end of this decade?
That is a provocative thought. The need for this expertise certainly isn't going away. It's only becoming more central to business survival and success. Thank you for guiding this discussion.
And thank you for the insights. A final thank you as well to our sponsor, www.cisomarketplace.com, for supporting this deep dive into the complexities of digital risk management. We hope this has been valuable for you.